Reporter Simpiwe Makanya throughout the morning, of course, bringing us the live visuals of chaos that had erupted earlier on. It seems like the situation has calmed down. This as everyone tries to assess what damages and injuries have been incurred, and also what the rest of the itinerary looks like. Simpiwe, good afternoon. If you can hear me, it is Liesl. I want to perhaps know from you where to from here. We can see that the party is marching from the previous location, obviously, where we saw some chaotic scenes. It seems like the situation has calmed down. Walk us through what's happening on your end.
Well, certainly, Liesl, good afternoon to you and good afternoon to our viewers if they've just joined us now. The leader of the EFF, Mr. Julius Malema, on a walkabout here in the township of KwaDambuza in Pietermaritzburg. A short while ago, Liesl, we saw, of course, those unfortunate, scenes where there was a clash between supporters of the EFF as well as the ANC, because as the leader of the EFF was trying to gain entry into a voting station, some of the supporters of the ANC stood on the gate trying to prevent the leader of the EFF from entering the voting station. Then afterwards we saw those chaotic scenes unfolding where his protection unit had to manhandle
I do believe we've lost your sound there. If you can hear me, perhaps just continue to contextualize what happened at the chaotic scenes a little earlier on as the walkabout to the next voting station takes place.
Well, Liesl, as I was trying to say earlier on, that when the convoy of the leader of the EFF tried to gain entry into the voting station, a group of supporters of the ANC who were wearing ANC regalia, some of them, stood on the gate, pushed it against the, convoy of the leader of the EFF, preventing him basically from gaining entry. Then his protection units had to come out of the vehicles to then now push the gate open to force their way into the voting station. And we saw some of the, supporters of the ANC being manhandled and assaulted, some of them by the protection unit. But of course, the leader of the EFF condemning that incident, saying that he told his protection unit to exercise, maximum restraint in terms of ensuring that they do not use any unnecessary, force in trying to stabilize the situation. And of course, Liesl, we did see police officers being stationed outside the voting station, but it would seem that they were overwhelmed by the situation because it's mainly the protection units that had to intervene in trying to, resolve the issue. They were just stationed outside the premises of the voting station, and they are still there as we speak to you. But the leader of the EFF is currently on a walkabout, saying that he took the decision to walk the streets of KwaDambuza precisely of the incident that transpired a short while ago, Liesl, where his protection unit had to force entry into the voting station here in KwaDambuza. This, by the way, Liesl, is the home of the Secretary General of the SABC, Dr. Blade Nzimande. Some of the ANC supporters who were, angry, chanting slogans outside the premises, were saying that this is KwaDambuza and you are not going to come here and do as you please. And of course, that's been the situation throughout this afternoon, Liesl, since the arrival of the leader of the EFF. Prior to that, Liesl, the two groups from these different political formations, that's the ANC as well as the EFF, were just chanting, in a jovial mood, singing. There was no indication whatsoever that something like this would actually happen when the leader of the EFF arrives, Liesl.
Simpiwe, I'm going to allow you perhaps to catch your breath. Of course, assessing the damages and also possible injuries is obviously what we're looking out for, and perhaps what's next on the itinerary as you make your way to the next voting station following the EFF leader Julius Malema, as you all make your way there. So as soon as we get more updates from you, we'll continue to carry that story. But moving on from KZN, we're going to continue our coverage on the voter registration weekend. Our reporter Reginald Witboy is on the ground in the Northern Cape, and we're going to now cross live to him. Reginald, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. Walk us through what is currently transpiring on your day. It's the second day. It's also the last day for voter registration. What have been the trends in terms of participation? Speaking to people on the ground, any voter apathy sentiments being echoed?
A very good afternoon to you, Liesel. Well, not any chaotic scenes here in the Northern Cape as to what my colleague Simpiwe is experiencing there in KwaZulu-Natal. Earlier on, we spoke to the IEC, Bonolo Modise, and he's saying that everything is on track. Things are running smoothly, and they are ready to go into the local government elections on the 1st of November. So I'm joined now by Vusi from the EFF here in the Northern Cape. And now I need to also make it clear, early on we spoke to the ANC here in the province, Norman Shushu, and then also later on we are going to speak to the DA's.
All right, Reginald, I'm going to just ask you to hang 10 for us. So we definitely want to get your perspective in the Northern Cape, but we're just going to go back to Pietermaritzburg, where the EFF leader Julius Malema is currently addressing the crowd. Let's take a listen.
Continue with working for the EFF and make sure that everything is run smoothly. Protect one another and continue to make sure that there is peace in this area. So please, we must have the highest form of tolerance, the highest form of discipline. At all material times, when people lose, they are going to provoke you. Yeah, please, and don't be easily provoked. Let's continue to maintain discipline, and let's do door to door and work for the EFF and make sure that the EFF takes this word. Dambuza is the home of the EFF, and no one is going to stop the EFF. So let's continue to fight, and let's make sure that even our candidate is protected from this tax. You know, our candidate is a female. They may be tempted to attack her. So we must make sure that we defend her at all material times. I salute you for being fearless and for standing your ground and making sure that you exercise your political rights, whether the ANC likes it or not. Continue with that fight. Amanda, thank you very much, fighters. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, Liesel. The leader of the EFF has just addressed his supporters here in KwaDambuza, calling on them to exercise calm and restraint. He's now leaving this particular area where we are, and he's going to now, I believe, a second location that has been planned in terms of his itinerary. He is here in the province of KwaZulu-Natal on a 2-day visit, which started yesterday in the community of Phoenix, and then visiting the 2 big townships in the province, that's Umlazi as well as Kwamashu. That visit yesterday was very calm. You see now on your visuals, this of the protection unit of the leader of the EFF leaving the area where we are. Police have now seemingly asked for a backup. I see there's a police van. I'm just going to ask my colleague Tulani Ngobo to zoom and at that police vehicle there that you see on your visuals accompanying the leader of the EFF, Liesel.
All right, Simpiwe, thank you very much for giving us that update. From Simpiwe, we're going to go back to our reporter, Reginald Witboy, who is in the Northern Cape. Again, Reginald, sorry for that interruption. We obviously was just chatting to you about what has been the trends in terms of voter turnout for the registration in the province. Walk us through what is currently transpiring on your end. All right, as we try and get Reginald Witboy back on the line to give us an update in his region, let's cross to the KwaZulu-Natal province again, where we've seen the IEC in KwaZulu-Natal saying community protests resulted in 3 voting stations not opening yesterday. The affected voting stations are in Sunduzi Municipality, Ward 15. Now, for an update on the latest developments in the province, we now bring in our reporter, Ayanda Mhlongo. Ayanda, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. The second and last day of the voter registration. What's the latest on your end?
Yeah, very good afternoon to you, Liesl. Good afternoon to our viewers. Well, the clock is ticking. In just a few hours' time, the voting stations are going to be closing. So there's this final push by the political parties. They are campaigning, driving around the Durban CBD, where we are trying, of course, to get as many people to come through to the voting stations to ensure that they are on the voters' roll, and those that have not yet registered to ensure that they are registered, while, of course, taking the opportunity to galvanize for support. We're just speaking to the IEC. They are going to be giving us a full update later on today in terms of what happened in the process throughout the 2 days. As you mentioned there, the 3 voting stations in Msunduzi, which is in the area of Pietermaritzburg, where since yesterday, due to protests, the voting stations there did not open. We have been told by the IEC that the community leaders, the police, and IEC officials are in that area meeting with the disgruntled community to try and find solutions to the challenges that are there, to at least try and get those voting stations open in the last couple of hours. But where we are, Liesl, in the Durban CBD, things have been going pretty smoothly. We have seen a number of people that have been coming through to the voting station. In fact, in the voting station where we are at, one of the points that have pleased the political parties, both the IFP and the ANC, has been the number of young people that have come through to register to vote, and those that have registered for the first time. Now, without wasting much time, let me now bring in the ANC. I'll speak to Mzwandile Zuma as well as Nkosikhona Gasa. Ngibonga kakhulu nje isikhathi esenu. Siqala nje ngokuthi kafushane niyababona abantu bebeza bezobhalisela ukuvota nalabo bezobheka ukuthi ngempela bakhona inohlwini lokuvota.
Ikakhulu abantu siyababona, but ikakhulu izolo kule stage saseThekwini College bafikile izolo kakhulu, but ke noma sinama challenges ke ukuthi bayafika kodwa bayagqoza bephinde bebheke leyo ukuthi basebenzise kakhulu online. So we encourage bonke abantu ukuthi ngisho ngakuthi uyenzile leye online yokuthi uregister online, but yiza ku voting station yakho ukwazi ukuyichecka, because what happened even nje kimi ngenza example ngami ngiyicheckile online ngavela ukuthi ngivota estation sase Marlborough eThekwini College, but mangifika on a voters roll angiveli. So sinxenxa nje wonke umuntu osendlini njengamanje othe yena ngeke ephume mhlambe ngokusabela iCovid wathi hayi uzosebenzisa leto effort industrial esebenzise iphone ukuthi eyicheck, but siyanxusa ke njengamanje for ifinal push ukuthi abaphume bezoyichecka. Ngisho ngakuthiwa uyicheckile efonini, yiza uzoyicheck estation, because kusenayo leto yama technicalities since uIEC ushintshe isystem wa introducer isystem entsha, so isenayo lento ukuthi ngisho uyenzile online but uthola ku voters roll esebenziswa uyena uIEC awuveli. Siyanxusa kakhulu ke njengoba sila sise 132 u132 unama VDs awu5, so ngifisa ukunxusa nje wonke umuntu ukuthi ephume kulama VDs awu5 from a music school, YMCA, Bester Park and Thekwini College and Clearwood. Siyanxusa ukuthi bephume nje bonke for i-final push bezobhalisa ukuze sizokwazi ukuvota ngomhla ka1.
All right, Mzwandile Zuma, let me move on now. Let's speak to Nkosikhona Gasa in the ANC's branch executive committee in the area. Nkosikhona, obviously this comes at a time when the ANC has had its challenges. Speak to us about people coming out. Are people interested? What has been the mood in the ward in which you represent? What has been the mood for are people willing to come out and showing interest in registering and also ensuring that on the 1st of November they come out to vote?
Ngiyabonga sisi. No abantu baphumile izolo abantu ngobuningi babo. Siyabona ukuthi noba kwenzeka okwenzeka phezulu kodwa la ewadinethu bakhombisa ukuthakaseka ipolitiki and basikhombisa ukusithemba. Ngiyabonga ukuthi namhlanje futhi baqhubeka ukukhuluma. Ngiyabonga sisi. Be right.
All right there. So we have representing the ANC in Nkosikonakas as well as Mzwandile. So of course they are now urging their supporters or members of the public rather to come out and ensure, saying that there has been something that they've picked up in terms of the technical glitches with some of the equipment that is being used by the IEC, and he's using an example of himself that although when he made we submitted through the SMS verification, his name was at this voter station, but when he came to check, his name was not on the voters roll. So urging people to ensure that they use the last final hours to come out, just to double sure, make sure that they are on the voters roll. Another important point, Diesel, that we must speak about before I hand things back to you is that being of stability and peace in the province. You see the events that are taking place in Pietermaritzburg and now between the ANC and the EFF, and this has been the call of political parties, particularly in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, where ahead of elections in the past we have seen a rise in political violence and clashes between various parties and internally within the political parties, and so there has been this call for tolerance in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. What we have observed is that the political parties where we have been, there has been a tolerance, they've been joking and mingling amongst each other, but that has been one of the concerns, and we know from the IEC in KwaZulu-Natal that they did speak out about their concern around safety of the election, and working of course with law enforcement agencies to ensure that this weekend goes off smoothly as they prepare for the election on November 1. Liesl?
Thank you very much for that update. Again, the IEC in KwaZulu-Natal just saying that community protests resulted in 3 voting stations not opening yesterday. Again, those affected voting stations were in Umsunduzi Municipality, Ward 15. Again, Ayanda Mklongo just giving us a brief update on some of the regions in KZN at this hour. But moving on, we've seen that the last day of the voter registration weekend, political parties are out in full swing, drumming up support ahead of the local government elections come the 1st of November. Now, the IEC said that at the close of registration yesterday, 488,670 people had in fact registered. Our SABC News reporter Vanessa Puna was in Milnerton in Cape Town, where the Democratic Alliance is campaigning.
Joining me is the DA leader, John Stienes, in terms of exactly what the message is in this ward and also in Greater Cape Town. John Stienes, a very warm good morning to you, sir.
Good morning to you.
So just in terms of your plans today, you are in Joe Slovo Park. We know that this ward is a DA ward. There has been some issues, though, in terms of the firing of the previous ward councillor, and also lots of issues here. One of the main issues in this broader Milnerton area is, of course, the sewage issue. I know you'll be visiting another area in Milnerton just now. Let's talk about how voter registration, what have you accomplished and what are your aims today in terms of getting those voters to register?
Well, we're very pleased with the outcome yesterday. We were able to get a significant turnout of the people that we were contacting, getting them registered, getting them to go to register and getting them online to register as well. So we're very comfortable where we're at the moment. Obviously, there's going to be a final push today. This will be the last chance people have to really get registered for the local government elections. And as you say, local government elections are important because they encompass all of those things that have a direct impact on your life as a voter. The roads you drive on, the water and electricity that you use, street lights and economic development. So it really is important that people do register for this, even braving the weather to do so.
So we know that you are taking a walkabout just now in Joe Slovo itself. I mean, just driving into this area, the conditions seem squalid in places. We know that in previous months and years we've been in this area. One of the big challenges I've mentioned earlier on is the sewage problem. People have been talking about the sewage, the water pump stations here, and also the impact, the ecological impact on the nearby Milnerton Lagoon. You know, I know there's a 10-year plan in terms of the city at the moment. Talk to us a bit about how this will impact residents now in the nearer future.
Well, of course, and as you can see from where we are, there's a lot of pressure on the system. There's been a lot of informal settlements springing up, and obviously that puts a lot of pressure on the infrastructure. A lot of stuff being thrown into the storm water drains, sewage infrastructure that's failing because it cannot deal with the pressure of the number of people. It was never designed to deal with the number of people it's going to have to do. So the city's got a plan now, and something that the mayoral candidate Jordan Hill-Lewis has been very passionate about is a big infrastructure build in the city. We're going to have to put a lot more focus on making sure that infrastructure has the capacity to deal with the fact that people are coming to the Western Cape in big numbers. It's always better where the DA is, and so it's natural that people would tend to gravitate towards governments that deliver and where there's employment opportunities. And unfortunately, that also comes with the fact that it puts pressure on your systems. So the city's going to have to really up its game in the next 5 years to roll out that infrastructure. That's why our election slogan is Cape Town works, but let's do more, because there's a lot more that we can do to turn this into a real world-class city.
So, Mr. Steenhuisen, at the moment we are standing in front of the Joe Slovo Sport and Recreational Facility. It's a voting station. You mentioned earlier on that there were some challenges at the Milnerton High School with regards to opening on time. Tell us a bit what you've experienced in terms of the timeless opening of voting stations on this final day of the final registration weekend.
Well, look, I think it's been a bit more lackadaisical than it was the day before. Milnerton, according to our local people, had not opened yet by 20 past 8. Apparently the voter management devices hadn't arrived, and the presiding officer had left the premises to obviously try and find out where these things are. So not ideal. There were apparently voters waiting to register. They were turned away. So it's not an ideal situation, but the IEC is going to have to really focus, particularly in the election period, to make sure that their voting stations open on time, they have all the material, because otherwise people are going to go away, and the chances of returning to a voting station are going to be next to nothing.
Your goods in transit took an unexpected detour. Collateral damage of riots, strikes, and civil unrest. Unless you have Sastria's unique special risk cover. It's like turning back time at unexpectedly low cost. When things go bad, Sastria makes good. Call your broker or insurer about Sastria's unique cover today.
You have dreams of renovating your home, but how? Your how is just a click away. It may be difficult times, but applying for a personal loan of up to 250,000 Rand from African Bank is quick, it's easy, and convenient. Apply online, request a callback, or visit a branch today. African Bank, we are you.
2021 municipal elections. The final voter registration weekend is on the 18th to 19th September from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. Every vote counts.
All right, welcome back to the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. Let's continue with more news at this hour. We've seen the Democratic Alliance leader, John Steenhuisen, says his party will abide by the ruling of the Constitutional Court. It all comes after the Apex Court ruled in favour of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. Saturday night, giving reasons, of course, where the majority judgment says its order did not require or preclude the IEC from amending its timetable to enable the holding of elections on the 1st of November. The ConCourt also says the decision to decree that the current timetable, which was drafted for the original date of the elections on the 27th of October. It stands, although the IEC may be able to amend it when reasonably necessary. The official opposition, the DA, made an application earlier against the IEC's reopening of the submission of the candidates list for the local government elections. Now, this followed by the decision. Of course, it says this decision was meant to help the ANC after it failed to register and submit lists of names of its would-be councillors in over 90 municipalities.
We're still studying the judgment. Our attorneys are still studying it. It's a very big judgment. It came out only last night. But certainly, we will abide by whatever the outcome of that is. We've still got a challenge in on the reopening of the lists, which we believe is an unfair departure from the precedent that the IEC had set in both the NFP matter and the IFP matter. And that is still waiting to be heard by the Concourt. But as I said, we will abide by whatever the outcome is. We're certainly not going to be running off to court with rescission orders and the like. We will accept it. We're busy in campaign mode. We're willing to take our chances with the voters of South Africa, and that's what the focus is going to be on the next 7 weeks.
Certainly will be an impact, though, on your party in this election.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends whether the ANC can get their act together, whether they can get their candidates registered, whether the internal turmoil in their party continues. But that's not our focus. Our focus is on getting our message out there to voters, telling them that the DA gets things done, and that's what we're out doing today, and that's what we're going to be doing every day for the next 7 weeks.
Well, for more, we are joined by SABC News senior political reporter Samkele Maseko. Samkele, a very good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. It seems that given the ANC's image to date and also the internal problems within the ruling party, I mean, where to from here based on this judgment? What are the implications for them ahead?
Essentially, with this particular judgment coming out that was released by the Constitutional Court on their website yesterday evening, saying that its judgment did not preclude the IEC from amending its timetable, would essentially mean that paves the way for the IEC to be free and to be more emboldened in their stance that they took to reopen the re-registration of candidates for political parties. You did see the court papers of the African National Congress, which said that it was not only the ANC that failed to meet its deadline to submit names. Other political parties too did not submit names in time, or others were excluded because of missing information such as your physical address, where you reside, where you're contesting as a ward councillor. So it essentially emboldens the IEC, and it also bolsters the ANC's case that it should defend itself for seeking for the IEC, particularly with the party liaison committee within the IEC, for the IEC to reopen its re-registration of candidates. So it also the ANC, and it further emboldens the IEC in a sense that they took the right decision in order to reopen the re-registration of candidates.
So I'm getting the same breath then. I mean, how will this then also impact independent candidates and even smaller parties? It seems like it's also a big plus for them going forward.
It's a big plus to them going forward because, for instance, if you look at parties like that of Jinemani and Zungulu, which is the ATM, they had also had some issues in the registration of candidates, so they are also benefiting from this plan. To look at the United Democratic Movement of Bantu Holomisa, who had initially asked for the IEC to extend the deadline from 5 o'clock and make it to about 9 o'clock in the evening. They had failed to register some candidates, particularly knowing that they've got their strong base in the Nelson Mandela Bay region, where the late Mongameli Bubane was the mayor of that particular municipality after toppling Ethel Trollip. So it essentially tells you that even smaller parties and independents are going to gain from this with the reopening of the registration of candidates who will be on the ballot paper to enter either as PR candidates or also to enter as ward candidates for their respective municipalities.
So, Mkele, without wasting too much time, I mean, it seems like the days are getting shorter as we head up to the 1st of November. I mean, looking at the what's in it for the DA now that this pronouncement has been made, and also just the methodologies and tactics from here and to, what are we seeing after this pronouncement from the different parties to date?
What we're essentially saying is that we saw with the president of the ANC yesterday when he was complaining in Soweto, and also today when he is in Mpumalanga, that he is saying that he's very open, is not having sleepless nights on this particular issue of the reopening of the candidate list for the IEC and being challenged by the Democratic Alliance legally, is saying that they, as the ANC, put across sound arguments legally and practically and factually on this particular case, and they are hopeful that the Constitutional Court will rule in their favor. So that judgment that came out of the Constitutional Court yesterday evening, which was published on the website and on their social media pages, essentially posted the governing party and having all of their candidates across all 93 municipalities where they have failed to register them, having registered them already. I know that in the city of Johannesburg, the regional secretary of the ANC in Johannesburg, Gamurero, has already registered those 6 candidates that the ANC has failed. So the particular region that is currently outstanding in Johannesburg is the Travel for the Tshwane region, where the ANC will be holding its manifesto launch on the 27th of September.
Maseka, SABC News senior political reporter. Thank you very much for your time again. Just giving us analysis after the Apex Court ruling in favor of the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa. Of course, giving reasons that the majority judgment says its order did not require or preclude the IEC from amending its timetable to enable to hold the 1st of November elections. We're going to take a quick ad break and we'll continue with more news and updates on the other side. Do stay tuned. This is The Week Ahead.
In this world where the future is uncertain, wouldn't you rather have an investment that grows your money faster with an effective rate of up to 10.6%? Do you want a bank that takes your money or a bank that takes your money seriously? Open a Nedbank fixed deposit on the Nedbank Money app today.
...2021 municipal elections. The final voter registration weekend is on the 18th to 19th September from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. Every vote counts.
Mzansi. Play your part and help curb the spread of COVID-19 by wearing a face mask at all times in public spaces. Practice good hygiene by coughing or sneezing into your elbow, washing your hands with soap and water, and sanitizing regularly. Register to get vaccinated. Together, we can beat COVID-19. The SABC, keeping you safe and informed.
All right, welcome back to The Week Ahead. Let's continue with our news at this hour. We're going to take a look at some of the main international news for the week ahead with SABC News International Editor Sophie Mukwena. A very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining us. Let's kickstart this conversation by looking at the inevitable UN General Assembly, which is obviously set to have a lot of issues topping its agenda. There's the issues in Afghanistan, COVID-19, and the resurgence, but ultimately also rebuilding the world economy and then focus on climate change. Can you paint a picture of what we can expect ahead of that address?
Well, clearly the General Assembly this time around, it is going to be a hybrid gathering. You'll have leaders joining in virtual and also leaders who have taken a decision to go in person. For example, the president of Botswana, Mokgweetsi Masisi, will be there in person, but also the president of Zambia, Heshelema Hakainde, will also be there in person. You also have the President of the United States of America, who will be making his first appearance, and he will be there at the UN, on the sideline of the UN or the margins of the UN, where he is going to host leaders virtual and those who will be there talking about COVID-19 and vaccines in particular. And it is hoped that he is going to assist in pushing the developed nations to ensure that they do share the doses. But of important is the General Assembly, the opening and the address by the Secretary General, who earlier on, when he spoke to our correspondent in UN in New York, Sherwin Bryce PC, indicated that he is going to be very upfront with issues and also indicate that the world is in a crisis, both when you look at the peace and security, looking at Afghanistan, but some pockets on the continent, when you look at Mozambique, when you look at areas such as the CAR is still a problem, the Sahel region, but also the fact that the COVID-19 has affected many countries, and the issue of rebuilding the economy better. All countries must be on board, because it will not be of interest to the United Nations to see the developed countries such as your G7, G20 being able to rebuild, while poorer countries, particularly those from the sub-Sahara region or the South-South, or you can say the developing South, are struggling to rebuild their economy. At the moment, even struggling to get their vaccines.
Absolutely. It seems like there's lots on that agenda. I think when we also look at how it's going to be a first appearance for President Joe Biden, who's said to have also organized a few sideline meetings to deal with issues of vaccines. What can we also expect on that front? And when we look at the attendance, I mean, there seems to be some controversy surrounding that too.
Yes, you know that the United States of America has taken a decision that it will force vaccination. And therefore, the United States, in terms of their rules or their laws and also the regulations to fight COVID-19 in New York, have taken a decision to ensure that people who are visiting New York are vaccinated. And therefore, the circular that came out from the mayor of New York was that all people who will be coming to New York must be vaccinated. And that would include people who will be at the United Nations General Assembly. And therefore, countries such as China and Russia have objected, saying that the UN precinct is an autonomous soil. And therefore, you cannot force people who are attending the UN General Assembly to vaccinate. Clearly, it is a fight also in terms of big powers on issues of access to vaccines. And Russia arguing that you cannot come up with vaccine passport when you know very well that developing countries are still struggling to get vaccines. And therefore, you can't expect everybody to be vaccinated. That prompted the Secretary General, Antonio Guterres, to intervene and make a statement saying that he cannot force anyone who's coming to the UN precinct to have a vaccine or to have been vaccinated, because the laws at the precinct are completely different.
In the same breath, speaking about restrictions, we've seen the UK also issuing restrictions on, countries in Africa, South America, amongst others. I mean, what red flags are also emerging here? We're looking at ahead of the UN General Assembly meeting that's set to take place. This is obviously also going to impact dynamics going forward. What responsibility does South Africa also have in airing their voices to counter this?
Earlier on social media, I pointed out that the announcement by UK in terms of saying that people who are coming from particularly the developing countries, they will not recognize the certificates, the vaccine certificates. I argue that it is wrong to do that, because you are literally continuing with the vaccine apartheid, but generally the discrimination. And therefore, President Ramaphosa, who is privileged to be the leader of South Africa, and South Africa being a member of the G20 countries, he can use that platform during the coming G20 summit to say this is wrong. But also President Ramaphosa is a co-founder and also part of the COVAX facility that was established by the World Health Organization to ensure access to vaccines around the world, that he can use that platform to also indicate that it is wrong to do this. Above all, President Ramaphosa is the campaigner or the main person who's leading the campaign against COVID-19 on the continent, and he is part of the AVAT team, leading that team. And therefore, he can use also that platform to fight for developing countries and poorer countries, that what the United Kingdom is doing, it is actually discrimination. And unfortunately, this happens at a time where the United Nations, the General Assembly this week, will be remembering or perhaps commemorating or observing the conference that was held in South Africa almost 20 years ago, that is in 2001, where it was a conference where the world converged in Durban. The theme of the conference was fighting racism and all forms of intolerance. And South Africa played a very, very important role. When talks were collapsing in 2001, it was Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, then who was the Foreign Affairs Minister, who spent sleepless nights to ensure that the conference doesn't collapse. I remember very well the then President of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, who was the chair of the conference because South Africa was a host, even couldn't go home when Gov passed on, because he felt very strong that he had to be there to push that Russia, US and Israel and Palestine find one another during the talks, and they can emerge with a resolution and also a text for that conference. And therefore, South Africa has played a prominent role, not only fighting discrimination and racism and apartheid inside South Africa, but wherever it is being displayed. And therefore, South Africa has continued in that trajectory to stand for the voiceless, but also to fight any discrimination or any form of intolerance. And therefore, now it is up to President Ramaphosa to push during the UN General Assembly, to push during the G20, to use COVAX and AVAT to fight for this. And above all, the coming COP26, Boris Johnson can't expect people to come to attend this COP26 with all these regulations.
I mean, it would, in the interest of time, it would have been great to also just get commentary on Algeria's ex-president, obviously having passed away yesterday. But I'm going to have to leave the conversation there. Thank you very much for giving us a preview of what we can expect for the week ahead. Again, SABC News international editor Sophie Mukwena chatting to us about the international news diary for the week ahead. On that note, we continue with our election voter registration coverage. Let's go back to we've also seen the African Transformation Movement, in fact, is on the campaign trail within the Eastern Cape province. The party was in Butterworth just yesterday and moved its focus to the rural areas today. ATM President Biolwetu Zungula is expected to continue in the Mthatha area with a planned rally at Sitebe. The party was founded back in 2018 and has since won some seats in national, provincial and even local spheres of government. Our reporter Nkololeko Nyembezi and video journalist Wandile Mbalilali report live from Mthatha. Well, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you very much for joining us. I think just in terms of what is transpiring on your end, particularly in Mthatha, this as the second and last day of voter registration wraps up. What's the latest on your front, Nkololeko?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, of course, we are coming from a village known as Isitebe, just outside Mthatha. This is one of the remote rural areas, and then is characterized by a number of things: poverty, unemployment. As you all know, that the Eastern Cape is one of the provinces with a high rate of unemployment, high rate of poverty, as in terms of the statistics and all the stuff. But now the ATM is here to make sure that at least it brings back the hope to the people of this area. For now, I've got the president of African Transformation Movement, President Zungula. Mr. Posho, you are here today. You need to say something to the people of this area. What is it that you have on hand to make sure that you bring hope to the people here?
Look, what is important for the people to understand is that we need leaders who fear the people of this country. We can't have leaders who disregard people at each and every goal, because what the people of South Africa need now, they need a servant government, a government that will put the interests of its citizens first. So what ATM is offering is a new kind of a leadership, a servant type of a leadership that puts the interests of the people first. You are right that there's a high number of people who are unemployed in the area, there's high poverty, etc., etc. So ours as the ATM is to restore the dignity of the people by making sure that they're economically active, because when people are running their businesses and having jobs, they will be able to live dignified lives. So for us as the ATM, ATM, that is the message that we are taking to each and every citizen.
Let's talk about gender-based violence. You have been so critical in making sure that at least a government does something to make sure that this gender-based violence thing is kept in every respect. What is your stance when it comes to keeping this scourge?
We need to be tough, very tough when it comes to our laws. You can't have a case whereby you've got repeat offenders, people who kill people consistently, and they're allowed to exist in this life. They must be taken to the capital punishment, because we can't have people who have clearly indicated they do not want to live amongst other people, and we allow them to kill people time and time again. We can't have hashtags each and every 6 months or marches each and every 6 months, but there is nothing tangible that is done by the government to send a message that killing of defenseless women and children will not be tolerated in our country. So as an ATM, we are not shaken and we are not moving back when we are saying there must be a death penalty for heinous and repeat crimes in our country.
Let's talk about, we know that you are heading for the local government elections, and then for sure there is a high hope that at least you will get some municipalities. How many do you think that you will grab into your pockets?
Look, ATM is contesting all over the country. We've got a strong footprint all over the country because the people of this country believe in the message that the ATM has been spreading ever since it got to parliament, because we are genuine, we are authentic as a party. We are not like other political parties who exist to play politics. If you listen to the message of the ATM, it will always spell out all solutions that are needed to actually get rid of all of the problems that we face in our country. So we hope that the people will vote for a party which is the ATM that provides solutions to all problems that we face instead of voting for the past. We now need to focus on the future, because in the future, if South Africa continues in the trend that it has been continuing on, we are going to have more than 100% youth unemployment rate, because currently it is sitting at 75. We are going to have high numbers of gender-based violence. That is why it is critical that a new government that is serious about improving the lives of the people takes over these municipalities, and that government is a government of the ATM.
Thank you very much, sir, for your time. There you have it. ATM is genuine. ATM is authentic. Those are the words from the president of the African Transformation Movement, Mr. Zungula. Back to studio.
Thank you very much. Again, just seeing there the African Transformation Movement on the campaign trail in the Eastern Cape. The party was in Butterworth yesterday, moving its focus to the rural areas today. Again, just the ATM president, Vuyowetu Zungula, expected to continue in the Mthatha area with a planned rally at Sithebe. Again, thank you very much to our reporter Ngololeko Nyembezi for that updated coverage. Let's continue with our coverage at this hour. This is the week ahead with myself, Liesl Wilson. We're bringing you all the stories that is important for the coming week ahead. Let's take a quick ad break. We'll be right back after this.
Tafula lendaba zesindebele ku SABC sizibophelele ekwethu.
August consumer price inflation will be released and the Reserve Bank will announce its policy decision on interest rates. Inflation is expected to still come in above the central bank's 3 to 6% inflation target, but below 5%, while the market is generally expecting the bank to keep interest rates unchanged.
Some economists expect the consumer price index to tick up ever so slightly to 4.8% in August on an annual basis. That compares with the 4.6% registered in July, while inflation is expected to rise by 0.4% on a month-on-month basis.
The main drivers for this month's number will be, on the one side, petrol price and diesel price increases. In August, we saw petrol price about 91 or so cent per litre up, diesel price around 56. So that will push a bit, and also I think food prices might tick up slightly further.
But poorer South Africans have been hit particularly hard, with their bucks struggling to stretch according to their needs.
Lower income households are experiencing inflation that's almost 2% higher than your higher income households. And it's mainly because it has been driven by food inflation and then transport costs. Unfortunately, also, if you look at the July numbers and also what what came out of the unrest that has seemed to have had a negative impact on a month-on-month basis as well, for especially food inflation, because the supply chains were negatively impacted.
The Reserve Bank will be digesting a myriad of economic data this coming week as it makes a call on whether to make a move on interest rates or not. And despite currently elevated international crude oil prices, which have hit around $75 a barrel, it's thought the bank won't be swayed by that factor alone.
That per se, I think, won't be a trigger for the Reserve Bank to actually move on interest rates. I think they look at the bigger picture, the overall basket of headline inflation. And there we see that inflation remains well under control in South Africa. I mean, we expect an average headline inflation number in 2021 of about 4.4%. So it's very close to the midpoint of the target band.
At its last MPC announcement, the Reserve Bank did hint at the possibility of raising rates before the year's out, but economic dynamics have shifted somewhat, and it's felt that the bank would be prudent in continuing to support what is still an ailing economy.
We do expect them to potentially revise their GDP growth numbers slightly downward, and on the back of that, we only see that those increases that we're talking about will come through early next year.
The Reserve Bank cut interest rates by 300 basis points in 2020, taking the repo rate down to 3.5%. We wait to see whether they'll maintain this level of monetary support to the South African economy for the balance of the year. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, we've been bringing you rolling coverage of the updates of the final day of the voter registration that is taking place across the country. It has been an absolute pleasure, as always, from myself, Liesl Wilson, and the rest of the team. Do have a good week. It is goodbye for now.
...2021 municipal elections. The final voter registration weekend is on the 18th to 19th September from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. Every vote counts.
A global health threat not seen in 100 years. Coronavirus sparing no country, with over 200 million cases worldwide and more than 4.2 million deaths and counting.
The course of the pandemic depends on the leadership of the G20 countries.
An increasingly two-track pandemic is causing a two-track economic recovery.
We won't get the vaccine production increase we need without action on trade.
We are all in mourning for those lost to the COVID-19 pandemic.
The SABC International News Desk and its team of correspondents working to bring you the very latest fact-based COVID-19 information.
The new administration says that it has increased vaccine distribution.
The coronavirus pandemic has changed business in Kenya.
The past 12 months have been unlike any in living memory.
From exclusive interviews with key newsmakers.
How can we quickly save lives?
To the impacts and implications on people on the ground. Our job to ensure we bring you all the angles.
Even the most optimistic timetable has a vaccine available next year.
India plans to supply 10 million vaccine doses.
Priority will be given to the aging people.
The challenge now for the government is convincing the public to be vaccinated.
Trust the SABC International News Desk. Independent.